During the early 1970s, the Hawker Siddeley Company developed the Hawk, a basic light trainer jet for the Royal Air Force. It proved highly successful and went on to serve with a large number of export customers. Well, during the 1980s, British Aerospace, which had acquired Hawker Siddeley, was looking to capitalize on the success of the Hawk and figured that if they developed a light strike jet based on it, the new plane would be a reasonable export success since the Hawk was already in widespread use as a trainer, and the pilot skills would translate directly from one to the other. Overall, a fairly reasonable plan. The new plane, named Hawk 200, was a single-seat version of the basic Hawk trainer, fitted out with a more comprehensive weapon system. They gave it expanded weapon hardpoints and compatibility with a reasonable selection of both air-to-air and air-to-ground guided weapons, an in-flight refueling probe, and significant changes to its navigation and avionics equipment. The 200 series prototype first flew in 1986, but was unfortunately lost in an accident soon afterwards, killing the test pilot. The program went on though, and development continued until the jet was refined into a production-ready design. The Hawk 200 currently serves with Oman, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Both Malaysia and Indonesia have used the jet in combat against regional separatist groups, but detailed information about those deployments has been hard to verify. Lots of conjecture, not a lot of details. Each operator of the Hawk flies a slightly different version. For example, Oman's jets are the Hawk 203, while Indonesia flies the Hawk 209, and so on. Exact production numbers are also a little difficult to verify, but based on some cross-referencing, roughly 50 jets in the 200 series have been built. What we get in War Thunder is simply the Hawk 200, a strike aircraft in Rank 7 of the UK tech tree at battle rating 10.7. This jet gets a full ballistics computer and a fairly advanced radar warning receiver that tracks E through J-band. The Hawk 200 doesn't get a radar set, but it does get a fairly adequate supply of countermeasures for this BR. For loadouts, the Hawk has 5 pylons that can take missiles, dumb bombs, and various rocket pods. Options for the centerline pylon are notably limited though. Your air-to-air missile is the AIM-9L. This is an all-aspect infrared missile with 30 Gs of pull, fairly good range, and generally reliable tracking. It doesn't get infrared countermeasures or anything, but the 9 Lima is a good weapon, and really it's one of the better dogfight missiles at this BR. Your anti-tank missile is the AGM-65B. This is a TV-guided missile, and while it's good at this BR, it still has some limitations. It can be difficult to lock moving targets with it, and it occasionally has trouble one-shotting main battle tanks. Plus, it's a very slow weapon, so long-range shots might end up wasted if the target gets destroyed or moves behind cover before the missile impacts. It's also worth noting that, like all TV-guided missiles, the AGM-65 is much harder to use in bad weather. Not impossible, but harder, and the match you're watching right now illustrates this, as you need to get much closer to the targets in order to actually get a lock. Your anti-ship missile is the Sea Eagle. This is a large missile with really good range and inertial guidance combined with active radar for terminal homing. This missile can't really be used against conventional ground targets, even if it could reliably track them, as its flight profile takes it down to the deck just above the waterline. If it's used over land, even attacking a ship that's off the coast, it will occasionally impact hills and terrain. The Sea Eagle has really good range, as I mentioned, but it's kinda slow, and even if all of your missiles hit the same ship, it can sometimes take a couple of minutes for the ship to sink, so the payout from using the Sea Eagle is often very delayed considering the flight time and how long it takes the ships to go down, but it is an effective weapon. In terms of its flight performance, the Hawk kinda flies like a Korean War-era jet fighter. It's subsonic, and at this BR that ends up being a bit of an issue. Without an afterburner or anything, the rate of climb and acceleration are well below average for this bracket. Now, it's not all bad news though. The jet rolls very well, even with a full weapon load, and its agility is surprisingly good overall. Remember, even though it's subsonic and it doesn't get an afterburner or anything, this is a small and fairly lightweight jet. Its maneuverability in combat is pretty good, and it even gets combat flaps if you need a little more angle at the expense of some energy retention. Speaking of which, this jet does lose a fair amount of speed in aggressive maneuvers, but that's to be expected from a jet like this without an afterburner, so no big surprises there. It also gets an air brake, which can be useful if you're diving in for an attack. Otherwise, no big caveats with its performance. Like I said a minute ago, it really flies like a Korean War-era gunslinger jet, and remember, it was based on a trainer, so its overall flight performance and handling are fairly accessible. Now, taking the Hawk into air battles might end up being pretty frustrating. It's just too damn slow relative to its bracket. You can take out a base or do ground pounding, but all your friends are going to beat you to the targets. You can be fairly effective in a dogfight, but anyone who knows this is just going to run away from you in their supersonic jet. The lack of engine power is especially problematic when you get an opponent who's even mildly competent, just flying a figure eight 500 meters above you, swooping down on the way by to take pot shots, forcing you to evade for a couple of seconds, and repeating the process over and over, using their energy advantage to prevent you from ever building up enough speed to pitch up for a shot without stalling out. The Hawk can do reasonably well in air combat, but it's also really easy to hard counter. Now, I generally don't bother with chaff at this BR, as any radar missiles you encounter will be fairly easy to avoid most of the time. Your slow speed actually kinda helps you here, since by the time you actually get into air combat, most of the enemy team's radar missiles will have already been fired off at your friends. If you end up on a map with ships, consider taking at least one Sea Eagle, even if it's by itself on the center line. You can sink ships with these, even just one of them, but remember, it might be a few minutes between taking your shot and getting kill credit. For close air support, the ballistics computer and good selection of weapons makes this jet a natural fit. The AGM-65s are the obvious pick when you have the spawn points for them, and I usually prefer a loadout of 3 Mavericks and 1 Sidewinder for self-defense. My general mission profile with the Hawk is to get close and fire all of my Mavericks in a salvo, either at one target or several targets, and then turn around and run. The Hawk doesn't have the engine performance to outrun SAMs, so try not to stay in range any longer than absolutely necessary. Even if you don't have the SP though, the dumb bombs and rocket pods are still plenty effective for this jet, so don't sleep on it just because you don't have enough SP for the Mavericks. I also want to mention the TBA pods, both the regular rockets and the Flechette mini darts. I've never personally had a lot of luck with them, but they're supposed to be supersonic rockets, and some players insist that they're really good. Give them a shot and see if you can make them work. Visually, the Hawk 200 is a single-seat version of the Hawk trainer jet. I think it kinda looks hunchbacked, and if I'm being honest, I'm not a huge fan of either of the paint jobs it gets. I feel like this jet would look much better in solid gray, but no such luck yet. Landing isn't too difficult, remembering that this is based on a trainer that's supposed to be easy to land. You can put the gear and flaps out just over 400 kilometers an hour, and it gets a drag chute, so the landing run isn't usually very long. Fairly basic and beginner-friendly landing performance. The cockpit has really good visibility, 2 large MFDs including a navigation mini-map, and the radar warning receiver is right where I like it. The HUD is fairly useful, and overall, this was a great jet to fly in VR. Highly recommended with the headset. To close out on the Hawk 200. This jet gets all-aspect dogfight missiles, it gets anti-tank missiles, and it gets effective anti-ship missiles. However, It's really slow, and it doesn't get a radar set. The final verdict on the Hawk 200 is that this jet is fairly well suited for close air support, but it struggles in air battles really just due to its low speed. If you need a jet for your British ground lineup, this is a fairly good pick. In air battles, you might find it pretty frustrating to use. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this next one.